Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Rundown, where we talk about 2A news and conservative views. I will be your host today, Craig DeLuz, coming at you from the West Coast, the left coast, behind the Iron Curtain, otherwise known as the Sierras. But as we all know, I do not do this program by myself.
That's right. My name is Mike Piwowarski, coming to you live from the East Coast. That's the coast with the most from the co-host with the most here on The Rundown. And Craig, it's a very special day, the first one of the year.
The first one of the year, and that would be Taco Tuesday.
It's raining tacos from out of the sky. Tacos, no need to ask why. Just open your mouth and close your eyes. It's raining tacos.
It's raining tacos out in the street. Tacos, all you can eat. Lettuce and shells, cheese and meat. It's raining tacos. Yum, 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 yummity yum. It's like a dream.
That's right, folks. It is like a dream on this fine Taco Tuesday.
You know, Craig, I had a thought about that song. Could you imagine how heavenly, how intense, how angelic that song would be if Elvis were singing it?
No.
I mean, the man loved his snack.
I will not even attempt to bring myself to imagine it.
Oh, it's just think about him on stage, all sweaty and everything, just singing about "It's raining tacos." You know, just he'd be amazing.
Yeah, thanks, but no thanks. I'm good.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and get into the program real quick. How about we start off with a quick shout out to our sponsors?
Yeah, let's say hello to our good friends over at Hitman Industries, hitmanindustries.net, hitmanindustries.net. You can get yourself an AR barrel for your rifle, for whatever you want to do with it. You want to use it to play golf with? Then do it. Go to hitmanindustries.net. California Republican Assembly. Well, I was going to wait for Craig to catch up with me. California Republican Assembly, fighting the good fight behind enemy lines. Now you can be part of California's future today at the California Republican Assembly. If you want some awesome field gear, some tactical gear, some wet weather gear, hunting gear, hiking gear, whatever you want. So like external gear that you can wear, go to uscombatgear.com. That's uscombatgear.com. More than just clothing, folks. I want to make sure you're clear about that. It's everything but the pistola itself, if you understand what I'm saying. And then, of course, if you want the best in concealment holsters there are, tactical holsters, handmade, veteran-owned and operated, go to Hog Holsters, HAWG holsters.com. That's HAWG holsters.com. Helping America wear guns. Make sure you use the discount code The Rundown, all one word, all caps, no spaces.
Folks, once again, these are our sponsors. They bring us to you so that we can bring you to them. Do us a favor. Do them a favor. Do yourself a favor. Follow the links to their websites in the description to this program. Check them out. I promise you will like what you see and you'll want to spend some money with them. And when you do, make sure you let them know that it was the guys over at The Rundown that sent you. All right. This is probably the biggest non-story that is a big story right now in these United States. And that has to do with the new Omicron subvariant. So just so you know, so we've got variants of COVID-19. I guess they don't want to call it COVID-19 anymore. So they've got variants, and then they've got, of the variants, they've got subvariants, right? And subvariants almost like, like like an operating system release. So we've got Omicron, or as I like to refer to it as Omicron, subvariant XBB.1.5. Now, this is big news right now because it is the largely the biggest or the most common subvariant that is out there. In fact, it accounts for right now about 41% of confirmed COVID-19 cases nationwide, about 75% of new cases that are out there. Now, the one thing, and by the way, and because of this new subvariant, and they're seeing a spike, which, by the way, folks, we've seen a spike in COVID-19 infections ever since COVID-19 came out. This is the third year in a row where we've seen this. But the difference between this year and quite frankly, even last year or the difference between the initial years was those always saw an increase or dramatic increase in the death rate or the number of deaths. Well, guess what? Omicron, I guess we'll call it Omicron XBB.1.5. Well, yeah, no, we're not seeing that. But at the same time, Mike, even though there's no significant increase in deaths, even though there's no significant increase in hospitalizations, we're still seeing local municipalities, we're still seeing some school districts deciding that they are going to, what's the word I'm looking for? They are going to require people to wear masks indoors. All of these old requirements that they had up, they're now starting to put up. In fact, this is so a non-thing, Mike, that they are having to add in the RSV and the flu numbers. And you look slightly confused, so I will. What are you looking for?
I'm looking for my mask. I can't find it. I can't find my mask. I don't know where it is.
I was going to let the joke play on a little bit longer as you're looking around for your mask. Dude, this is the biggest, like I said, the biggest non-story, large story that is out there these days.
Folks, if tonight, later today, after you've had your tacos and you're laying in bed and for some reason you can't go to sleep, pull this story up and read it. It's guaranteed to put you out with so many useless facts and alarms and bells and whistles. Craig, I could barely read this one after we talked about it this morning. It's just one of those. Who are they kidding? I mean, Craig, if the new Omicron, came with the shotgun blast to the face, people wouldn't care anymore. Okay, we're done. We're over it. We don't care if it's fatal upon first contact. We're done with it. Move along. Nothing to see. Okay. And this one is absolutely nothing. This is a dude coughed in Cleveland. And now all of a sudden I got to wear a mask in other liberal states. We're done. You've lost your grip. You're not getting the control back. Move along. Okay. We're over this. Oh, by the way, I think XBB.1.5, wasn't that a George Lucas movie from the 70s?
Probably so. Okay, Mike, right. I still see people walking around, once again, wearing masks. And the worst part is I see them putting these masks on young people. Now, mind you, COVID-19 has not been a serious danger to young people. I mean, it is as dangerous as, I'll put it this way. The side effects from the vaccine for young males has almost or around the same level of danger as does Omicron, which is very, very, very. It's very rare that the grand total of individuals under the age of 18 that have died from COVID in the United States, it's still a very, 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 very small number. And yet you have people who've put so much fear into young people that you still have them walking around wearing masks.
Yeah, no, that should be an issue, and you're not sure how to confront that. You don't want to confront people with their kids around and stuff like that, but maybe some sort of public policy or public shaming, to force these children into their ridiculous ways with these masks. But I know I see adults with it. I saw one yesterday, Craig, before the Omicron XB47 or whatever it is came out, and it said, it was people in their car. It was a woman driving in her car with her mask on, and she wasn't Asian, by the way. So,
and she was probably by herself, right?
By herself in the car, windows up, had the mask on, and I was just like, you know what? I like my truck, and it's a little bit older. I should hit her. I should hit her with my car. Yeah. I should hit her with my truck.
I just wonder if guys who drive alone in their car with their mask on, I wonder if those are the same people who lie alone in bed with a condom on just so that they don't get a sexually transmitted disease.
Oh, you're assuming they know how to use a condom and what it goes on. So, that's
well, hey, they somehow figured out a mask. Or have they?
Yeah, their trans friends put it on them, right? Isn't that?
This is the thing. Some of the people I'm talking about, I'm talking about young people. I'm talking about teenagers. I'm talking about even 19, 20. But once again, we have created this fear. And don't get me wrong. If you are a senior citizen, if you are morbidly obese, if you are immunocompromised, I get you wanting to take extra steps, right? But if you are young, if you are a young male, if you are young, healthy, with no pre-existing conditions, why are you still walking around in fear of something that has about the death rate of cold? If that.
Listen, Craig, if you're a young male, and I don't approve of this, but I get it. If you're a young male, 16 to 20, high school, a little early college, that kind of stuff in that age group, and you're wearing a mask, I think I'm willing to give them a pass because they're clearly doing it to have sex with a girl. That's the only reason they're probably doing it. Is they just, the girl said you should wear a mask. We can be friends, okay, and they did it. That's
right. Okay.
Tell me if at that age you had other goals. Tell me if that age you had other goals and you weren't willing to do anything.
I'm gonna have a drink on that.
So you're going to abstain is what you're going to do, unlike what you did back then. But okay.
Moving right along. Okay, so in California, a law was passed last session that basically made it so that you could not advertise firearm products or firearm-related products to children. Now, mind you, let's just be clear. You cannot sell firearms to children. It is completely and wholly, utterly illegal to do so. Now, you can market products to parents or to adults who might want to get their children interested in or expose them to firearms, in particular for the purpose of firearm safety, right? Well, there is a law that basically passed that said, you cannot do that. That is illegal. And as a result of that, you've got a number of firearms groups that have filed lawsuit against the state of California for restricting the freedom of speech. Now, mind you, in the state of California, there's already a regulation that says that you are not allowed to, if you own a gun store, you are not allowed to have the image of a handgun on the outside. It cannot be visible from the outside of your store. It's funny because it can be inside, but if you can see it from the outside, that's you are breaking the law. And that's more of a regulation as opposed to an actual law passed by the legislature. But in this particular case, they're talking about advertising to children. So this was what was the firearm, Mike, that this particular law? There was one that they had made that was, the goal of it was to promote the AR-15 platform for parents who wanted to get their younger children. It was like it had a smaller thing. What was it called? The AJR or something?
It was like an 80% scale AR, like a little plinkster. A plinkster is what they call them. Shoots 22.
Right. So it was a 20. It was a 22, and people just lost their minds because they had this and they were advertising it to kids. Now, let's forget the fact that whether it's video games or cartoons, the level of and the inclusion of weapons and violence that are included in cartoons these days. Anyway, once again, I just think this is completely and utterly idiotic. And I'm glad to see that there are gun rights groups that are standing up and fighting, because it just seems to be, once again, if they can take away your Second Amendment rights, then their next goal is to take away your First Amendment rights. Absolutely, right. And as we say all the time, that the Second Amendment is the backbone of the Bill of Rights and the entire Constitution. It lets you, it gives them a little hesitation before trying to come and take others away from you. Oh, you want to take away my First and Fourth and Seventh and Eighth? Oh, well, did you forget the Second? I got this one right here. That says, what is it? No, we're not letting it happen. Which is why they continue to plug away at taking away your Second Amendment rights, by the way, folks. So, yeah, Craig, this is ridiculous. You know what I think I would do? I would get pictures of guns that
we're close to pistols, right? Like a picture of a toy pistol, right? And put that outside. When they say you can't have that, that's a handgun. I go, no. You can see right here. It says, Mattel on it. It's not real. Or maybe an 80% receiver of a handgun, because if it's an 80%, it's not a gun, right? I would mess with them pretty hard, but that's just me. I like to. What's this button do? What's this button?
Well,
do?
the problem is, the only problem with that is that then when you wind up having to fight these fines, you've got to pay lawyers' fees to you got to pay a lot of lawyers' fees in order to prove that you didn't do anything wrong, even though you clearly didn't. A lot of these folks will fine you anyway. Like I said, we had one case when I was working with the Firearms Policy Coalition where an individual got arrested, had his firearm confiscated for concealed carry of a long gun. Now, mind you, there is no such thing. There is no law relating to that. And we had to actually have one of our attorneys go in and put together a brief for both the judge and the assistant district attorney to inform them of that. And anyway, but trust me in that it costs money. Even when you've done absolutely, positively nothing wrong, you wind up having to come out of the pocket. And that's the whole point behind this whole allowing individuals to sue people over violations of California gun law. The whole point is not that people are going to be held accountable. The whole point is to bankrupt people, in particular in the industry, by filing frivolous lawsuits.
Yeah, absolutely. We talked about this recently on another program. That's the goal. Is to take money away from the gun industry, from the Second Amendment industry, whatever it happens to be. If we know it cannot win the case, I could still go after their pockets and try and make them pay for their defense.
Well, yeah, I did an interview yesterday about this, and one of the things that I noted was the people who you're going to see these lawsuits coming from, it's going to be folks like Everytown who are backed by billionaires and multimillionaires, the people who basically they can afford to pay for and lose lawsuits because they have more money than, say, a lot of these smaller firearms retailers.
There's a case going on right now that we talked about. It's a multi-targeted case. It's by the city of Buffalo and the state attorney general in New York, and it's a frivolous suit. It's protected by the Protection of Lawful Arms and Commerce Act, but they've continued to file them, and they know it's going to get tossed, but they know they're going to get into the deep pockets of the gun manufacturers to make them spend the money to try and defend themselves. Yeah,
and I think that when people do stuff like that, they ought to be required, in particular when the government does it, they ought to be required to pay legal fees when they file frivolous lawsuits like that. But hey,
and they should. But guess where that money comes from? Whether it's from the government, which means you end up paying for it anyway, or it's from a Bloomberg, which it's a drop in the bucket for him. It's
right.
Like dropping change in the ground for him. It doesn't matter.
Well, you know what? Then maybe people will start to learn not to elect these people to office.
You're serious? I'm sorry.
A man can always hope, right? It's the beginning of the new year. A man can have some hope.
Sure, he can. Yeah. I hear if you wear a mask, it protects you from lawsuits. Maybe that'll work. I don't know.
Well, yeah, socially distance yourself from liberals. That's more effective.
I'm trying. I've even put up a wall on the southern border, but they keep coming over.
Speaking of a wall in the southern border, Florida looks like they may need one right there at their southern border. There was a thing that happened, basically, if you guys have been paying attention, a group of immigrants, migrants, whatever you want to call them, folks who are entering the country illegally, actually washed up on the shores there in the Florida Keys down there. About 500 of them, so many so that they wound up forcing a closure of a major park. And Mike, I brought up this story because I just wanted to ask you the question, how long do you think it will be before they wind up somewhere wherever Kamala Harris lives?
Oh, they're probably there already. This story came out a couple hours ago. They're probably already there, sitting out on her front porch. But listen, think about it. These folks just had a cruise, right? So now they're about to get a tour of the U.S. They're gonna get to go to places like Chicago and Martha's Vineyard and Delaware and D.C. They're about to get the whole treatment there.
So now they're saying that they believe these folks are from Cuba. They're at least from the Caribbean. I'm assuming that they haven't done any sort of background checks or anything like that on these folks. So we don't know exactly where they came from. But I think how they handle it there in Florida is going to say a lot for it's going to say a lot for the issue and a lot for Ron DeSantis's ability to address issues like this. And like I said, I think you're going to see this dealt with. I would not be surprised to see them sent someplace in a more of a, what we're looking for, a sanctuary, some sanctuary city somewhere throughout the country.
Well, listen, if and then the Florida investigators and INS down here, are used to dealing with this. If it turns out that they are, Cubans, they're actually from Cuba, well, then they will be staying right here. They'll be staying in Florida. This is the largest Cuban, population center in the United States, and it's a thriving leadership population, and these Cubans will be welcomed in because guess what? They fled from an oppressive communist dictator regime, and they will actually be like I said, become if not already on the way to becoming productive members of the society here in Florida. The Cubans, they're hermanos, they're our brothers down there, and they're welcome here anytime they can get here.
Mike, you actually make a significant point, and that is that a lot of the issue that we're having here is not about people seeking legitimate asylum. Right. Now, mind you, we don't necessarily appreciate the way in which they did it. They came because there's a way in which you do that. There's a way in which you apply for that. But the difference here is, number one, they can't apply for asylum while they are still in Cuba. Right? That is not a possibility. So I get that, right? Even people who are coming to our southern border, once again, once you're in Mexico, you are no longer in immediate danger of being persecuted, from the country in which you came. So there's no reason you can't stay in Mexico. There is kind of a reason why you can't stay in Cuba if you're trying to apply for asylum, because the chances of you actually getting it are kind of slim and none. The other thing is there are people who are legitimately asking for asylum, but what you've got now at our southern border are people coming from 160 different countries who are all trying to claim asylum. Oh, I'm persecuted. Oh, I'm persecuted. Well, wait a minute. Not all 160 of those countries are actually persecuting their people. You are not in danger just because you don't want to live there anymore. And that's the thing is we need to process all applications, but just because you are applying does not mean that you will get asylum. Just because you are applying for asylum doesn't mean that we ought to just release you into these United States, because guess what? We probably know that those people who do not have legitimate claims to asylum are probably not going to show up to court when they're supposed to, right? That's the issue. That's the real issue, is not knowing who's coming into our southern border, knowing that a significant number of individuals do not have legitimate claims of asylum.
No, you're absolutely correct. Like we know Cuba, right? But there's no land path for them to get here. And Venezuela is on that list as well right now. But when we see them come up through Mexico, they have their documentation, they have everything that says they're from Venezuela, unlike everybody else that goes, no, I don't know where I'm from, I just want to be America, and so no, sorry, it's not the investigators that actually do this job know how to do it. Unfortunately, under this administration, they're told not to do it.
Right.
Just let everybody in. Just let them all in.
Right. And honestly, I think they should have to remain in Mexico. Unless you can prove that remaining in Mexico, you are going to continue to be persecuted, which basically means you're saying that the Mexican government is persecuting you.
And, we can see across the river there, in Mexico and Texas. So when they say, oh, no, we're being persecuted over there, like, I don't know, it looks like you got a tent, you got a house, you got whatever you're doing, you're in the camp over there. I don't see them coming through and whipping and beating and dragging people out and killing them, like they do in Africa when they have the camps over there. So tell me again how being over there means you're being persecuted. Not so much. Sorry.
Right. We have a right, just like every nation, to control who enters our borders, to control who enters our country. And the problem we have with the way in which the Biden administration has handled this is that he acts as if we have absolutely no right, to determine, to determine who gets to enter our country and who does not.
Yes, agreed, sir. Agreed with you.
All right. Moving right along. All right, this last one. So I told you we experienced over the New Year's weekend, we experienced a number of serious storms, a serious storm that took place. And, because in particular, largely because it was the first major storm that we've had in a few years here in California. You may or may not know that California has been suffering through a drought. There was a lot of rain that was dumped in a very short period of time. We saw here in the Sacramento region, we saw a number of issues of flooding as levees did not respond well to too much water or too much rain. But now they've developed this new thing, and they keep doing this, creating these new words, an atmospheric river. I'm talking about how it floods or may have contributed to at least 3 deaths here in Northern California. Now, Mike, I'm just wondering, at what point are we going to start calling out the left and calling out some of these climate folks for just making stuff up? Literally, it's called a storm. It's not an atmospheric river. It's a storm, right? And it was a big storm. Don't get me wrong, but why do we allow them to create these things, these names, in order to put fear in people's hearts so that they will buy their climate change madness?
Yeah, and I pulled it up, Craig. Atmospheric rivers are relatively long, narrow regions in the atmosphere, like rivers in the sky, that transport most of the water vapor outside of the tropics. This is on the NOAA website, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. So this is a government website now also pushing this climate control, a dictum that they want to get out there concerning atmospheric rivers. Folks, I think most of you know I'm a pilot. That's one of my other skill sets. School I went to, a 4-year school for pilot school. I was over 2 years of meteorology, to the point where I could go take the meteorology test and be on your local news the way we do weather. A lot better than they do on most of your local news stations, by the way. But all weather is fluid. Okay, the gases are fluid, right? It's an airborne fluid. Gas is a fluid. If you didn't know that, if you have liquids that are fluids, so it all moves together. All right. It's always been. We've always called it as it all moves in fluid style motion. Air and water all move the same methods with the same resistance. But for them to try and bring up this new term of atmospheric river to make it sound like the climate has changed all of a sudden and now there's an assault up on you by an atmospheric river. No, it's called an air mass. It's just a simple air mass that moves through with a certain level of humidity in it, that affects your weather. It's just weather. It's just an air mass. It's just a storm. It's just a front. There is no new giant evil atmospheric river in the sky that's coming to get you because of global warming. Okay, relax.
And we've seen this every certain number of years or so that I can recall, both growing up both growing up as well as just as an adult. It's like almost every, I want to say 6 to 7 years or so, you just see once again a series of storms where a year where you get a lot more rain than you do other years. And then not long after that, you wind up with a few years where you get a lot less rain than other years. And it just seems to go in a cycle, and the climate just tends to, over that cycle, change. Oh my, is that what we call climate change?
Yep. Craig, it's
the real definition of climate change is climate changes.
Yeah. You know what's going to happen during the summer, Craig? It's going to be hot. All right. You know what's going to happen during the winter?
It's going to be cold. And rain and wet.
Some winters might be colder. Some summers might be hotter. But the problem is we try to do this on a calendar. All right. We try to say that, oh, it's climate change because this year it was 0.1 degree or 1 degree less than it was. You can't put Mother Nature on a calendar and say, this year she did this, so this is what's expected to happen every year thereafter. It doesn't work that way. It comes in, like you said, on a minimum 6-7 year cycles, and sometimes on a 50 to 100 year cycle as it works. Let me tell you something about these atmospheric rivers, Craig, that you're getting there now. The amount of water we have on this planet is finite. Okay. It doesn't disappear and go out into space. Okay. If it's not wet where you are, it's wet somewhere else. It's the same. We have the same amount of mass. We have the same amount of fluids. We have the same amount of gases. All right. Water doesn't escape and go into the atmosphere and make Mars wet or anything like that. What we have is what we have. It's not wet near you. It's wet somewhere else. Just wait your turn.
Hey, well, now, see, there you go. See, you're using logic, and you do know that logic and reasoning, you do know that is an example of white supremacy, right?
Well, I'm a white supremacist, right? We determined that yesterday, right?
We determined, well, based on some definitions, I'm a white supremacist. So.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. Like I said, what the hell is an atmospheric river? Thank you for that clarification, Mike. And I thought folks out there might want to hear a little bit about that. Yeah, it's a bunch of hooey. It's nothing new. It just means, yeah, it's a big storm.
That's it. And it just happened to be your turn. That's just the way the jet stream was moving. You got it.
It is your turn. Speaking of turns, it's time for today's parting shots, brought to you by Hog Holsters. That's hogholsters.com. Make sure you go there, get your custom-made holster today. Make sure you use the discount code The Rundown, all caps, one word. Save some money today. All right, our first one is going to be in honor of Taco Tuesday. Our good friend Mr. Danny Trejo decided to tell us a story. You want to go ahead and share this one with the folks who are just listening to the program?
Yeah. Oh, I didn't know I was got to do it. Hold on, I got to practice my Danny Trejo voice here. All right, here we go. So that's when I slapped the dirty green pendejo for ruining Christmas, and then I made everyone tacos. The end.
Okay. Not only do you get the random Danny Trejo meme, but you also get tacos on Taco Tuesday. Can it get any better?
Yeah. Don't be grinching around Danny Trejo. We just learned that, right?
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. This next one is in honor of the final wrapping up of the January 6th committee. And now they're it's kind of funny because they had the big show and they got no push out of it. They've released their recommendations and they've gotten no push out of it. So now they're leaking out and trying to put out a bunch of different little information, hoping something will get people excited and interested in the January 6th committee. But I think there's a fundamental question that is left out of this one and left out of their analysis. And this is it's got the young, looks like African kid looking at what appears probably an aid worker. And he got the skeptical look on his face. You guys have all seen this image before. And so it says, so you're telling me that the most heavily armed citizens in the world attempted an unarmed insurrection?
Yeah. Tourism is not a crime.
I will not go as far as to call it tourism because there were a number of people who were there who did engage in some violent acts. But I would say the overwhelming majority of the people who have been brought up on charges did not do anything. Were not involved in any sort. Well, I don't think any of them were involved in insurrection. I also do not believe that the majority of the people who were brought up on charges were engaged in not only not in an insurrection, but most of them were not involved in any violence at all.
Let's equate it to like I don't know, Craig, you go to these all the time, football games, right? And the people go there, they go to watch the game and enjoy their team. Do you think any of them plan on going there and ending up in football jail and getting arrested for fighting drunkenly in the stands?
No.
Okay. I think the same thing probably happened during the visit to the Capitol. I think a large group of people decided they were going to go over there, and a couple of them got stupid and did stuff that got them arrested for things that should have been considered under an affray statute, a riot statute, not an insurrection. This is just absolutely ridiculous, but it's been put on for 2 years now, based on the liberals' belief to take down Trump and everything all conservative. But that's just one man's opinion.
There you go. And I think that's a reasonable perspective. Then there is the release of the Twitter files. This one is a fun one. You've got the ostrich with his head stuck in the ground and says, "Libs trying to hide from the truth that the Twitter files are real."
There you go.
It is amazing because whenever I do talk to liberals about the Twitter files, they are completely and utterly like, yeah, no, whatever. He's ruining Twitter. They always change the subject to he's ruining Twitter and he wants to let all these racists back on Twitter. That's all they ever turn it back to. They completely and utterly ignore the fact that federal agencies conspired. When I say conspired, because they paid money to social media and internet companies to suppress stories, to suppress information, to silence, or at the very least, to throttle the voices of people who they disagreed with.
Yeah, throttle down the voices. Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
Just so y'all know, that's a real thing. If you don't believe it's a real thing, just look up Twitter files.
There you go.
It's all there.
Google
it's
it.
all there in their own words. Which, by the way, and this one is kind of in honor of, well, you have the left who wants to take away our private property rights. They want the government to take over our stuff. They want to. You have the government wanting to quote unquote tax the rich or redistribute wealth. Once again, private property rights. They want to silence. People on the right. People who disagree with them, whether you're on the right or left. If you disagree with the government narrative, they want to take away your right to free speech. They definitely want to take away your right to free exercise of religion. They also want to take away your right to keep and bear arms. And that just reminds me of this leftist proverb. What do you need rights for? Are you up to something?
Yeah, it's a picture of Stephen Colbert there, liberal lefty that he is.
Well, and that's kind of the point, is that it seems like we're supposed to, if you don't just go along with whatever the public narrative is, or the left's narrative, or the government narrative, then you ought to be silenced. You ought to lose your right to keep and bear arms. You don't get to voice. Everybody gets religious freedom, but you. They seem real content on taking away our rights in order to protect us. What?
Yeah, I had some friends over this weekend, and we were talking about these issues, and a couple of them were, well, I don't know, they weren't sure. And I said, listen, you know how you look right now? You look like Stephen Colbert when he brought Jon Stewart on talking about the Wuhan coronavirus, and they had never seen it before. So I showed that clip, and I said, there you go. Here's somebody who you thought was on your team, and when he started to go the opposite way, using things like, oh, what are they? Facts. That you totally didn't know you don't know how to react. And I showed them that video clip, and it was almost as funny watching the looks on their face watching the video clip as it was watching the video clip. So, and if you haven't seen it, folks, you need to go see this. When Jon Stewart came on the Stephen Colbert Daily Show to talk about the coronavirus.
And I think there's an important fact, because Jon Stewart, and I think we and Jon Stewart probably agree on, when it comes to public policy, on very few things. But Jon Stewart is not the enemy. The enemy is the person who seeks to shut down the voice of anyone with whom they disagree. The whole point of our form of government is to debate in the public square and in the halls of government based on logic, critical thinking, and facts, and then arrive at a position, a public policy position, a way in which we are going to go as a country. And we are not wholly wed to that. Who knows? The winds of opinion may change. But the idea is to have that public discussion, have that public debate. But when you seek to silence the other side, the difference between Stephen Colbert and Jon Stewart is Stephen Colbert wants to shut down any debate from anyone with whom he disagrees. And Jon Stewart is saying, no, we need to have this discussion. I don't have to agree. And by the way, I don't have to agree with you on everything, right? We need to have this public debate. Our government, our form of government doesn't exist, doesn't work without that public debate.
No, I'm with you. And I've listen, you've heard me say it before. There's a group of comedians in that, closer to our age group than others, but that are from that, the city, Long Island, the northern New Jersey area, the likes of Chris Rock, Kevin James, Ray Romano, Jon
Burr.
Stewart. Exactly. That are much more conservative than you realize in their personal beliefs. But all of them that we just mentioned know how to, use that or how to use that and not get in trouble in politics with their crowds.
Right.
Jon Stewart's job was to do that. Remember, that's what the Daily Show was. Whereas Jon Stewart sat on one side of the bench, he poked fun at both, unlike Stephen Colbert, who can only take one side.
Well, exactly. Although he has taken a few shots at Biden. more on his senility than anything else.
You have to at this point. Like
Yes.
you and I have talked about that. You have to at this point. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking about having to, we have to make sure we give this shout out to our sponsors.
Yeah, let's say hello again to our good friends at Hitman Industries, hitmanindustries.net. Talked to them yesterday. They're going to be at the SHOT Show with us at the party, and you can meet them there, get some free swag from them there, maybe even some free barrels. But if you can't get to the SHOT Show, you can go to hitmanindustries.net and get whatever barrels you need. The California Republican Assembly, fighting a good fight behind enemy lines. You should be involved in California's future today, and you could do that at the California Public Assembly. And of course, you want some awesome tactical gear for you to use during your everyday life, during hiking, during hunting, whatever it happens to be. Go to uscombatgear.com.
Folks, these folks bless us by allowing us to come to you every day. So do us a favor, bless them by at least visiting their website. But when you go there with the eye of, hey, is there something here that I could use? And I'm sure there is. Spend some money with them and make sure you tell them that was the guys over at the Rundown that sent you. And with that, we're going to call it a day. We very much appreciate you tuning in. We appreciate you liking and sharing the program. We hope that you will return to enjoy the program tomorrow on Hump Day. Y'all take care.
Hump Day.